Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I hope everybody's doing great today. So we are going to go for some winter themed blanks. With winter kind of approaching, and some of you may have a little bit of snow or snow-capped peaks around you. So I thought, let's go for something a little bit kind of wintry, snowy, and start kind of getting ready for the season. It should be kind of fun. So we're going to go for bespoke length. I thought this would be a really fun one to try to, incorporate a little bit of like that transparent type stuff, or at least translucent. Obviously, I don't know if you guys saw the thumbnail. In my head, I actually had something in my head and then actually went out and found a thumbnail that kind of matched it a little bit. So I'm thinking white, obviously for snow. Some blue, blues. If you look at that thumbnail, you're looking at kind of like I think it was like a snowy meadow type thing. Maybe there was mountains in the back. I don't know. I looked at so many pictures, I can't even remember what the thumbnail was at this point. But, the idea I had in my head was like, snow ground, some like maybe mountains, just kind of the picture that I see around here. And usually you kind of have some blues, you may have some blue sky in there. There may be some blues in the snow. There may be water even running through like a river or something like that. You get those kind of things like ponds tend to, your ice has a little bit of blue in it, let's say. And then the other thing that kind of pops out, and this may not be like the first thought, but a lot of times when you see kind of like a snowy meadow and then there's like a forest, you see the trees, they're like brown, right? You kind of have like this white and brown with blue in there as well. So those were the kind of the color palette that I had in mind for something snowy. And I've done things like this before. I used to sell a blank. I kind of quit doing the pine cones because they were such a pain to cut that I just kind of gave up. The other issue that I was having was they were warping, and so I just kind of gave up on pine cones. But I had one called Alpine, and it had the same, white, blue, and then the pine cone was that kind of brown in there. So I thought, let's do some bespoke blanks with those colors. One thing that that's like new, that's different, we're gonna add a little bit of macro sparkle to the white. That, if you wanna go for something snowy, it is so awesome. It's like perfect. You get that kind of glittery, if you're just seeing that kind of, like I said, like a meadow or something, or even just like your like lawn covered in snow, it glistens, and that macro sparkle with white is just, it's first thing you think of is snow. So we're going to do that, and then we'll kind of mess around. Now this one is going to be fairly complicated actually, and just a disclaimer or disclosure, I had to do these already because the Pen Blank Club boxes need to go out on Monday. So I have most of them ready, and I've already done a few pours, which was probably a good idea because this one gets complicated. So I think hopefully that'll also add a little, I don't know, interest in this casting. What I'm going to do is we're going to pour 2 of these 4 tall boys, which that adds a little bit of complexity. Sometimes it's a little hard to get 8 done. Now what I typically pour, I made these for myself. And these are not available. These are a pain to make. But I would do 6, and this was pretty simple. When you switch over to 8, it starts getting a little harder. I think when you get a little higher than that, unless you can pour, if you're using colors that don't really matter about any, like a little bit of kind of like that bleeding together stuff, you can start earlier and you'll have plenty of time. So I think you could probably do like 3 of these at once, given the temperature in the shop's cool. Your colors are not like really heavily dependent on having that like strict line of non-bleed kind of thing. If you can kind of let them blend a little bit, you should be good with like probably 3 of these. I only have 2 of them. I need to get some more of these because I do like these 4 tall ones from P-Town. But anyway, it should be kind of fun. I don't know. I will say, I don't think I've ever tried to do 12 because I could do 2 of those 6s. It's a little, I don't know, you start adding a lot of things that you got to pour at once, and like lots of, the other thing is if you have a lot of colors, that's where, like if you're doing 2 colors, not a big deal, right? Or like 1 color, you could probably knock out 3 of those 6s, no problem, maybe more. But if the more colors that you add, the more complexity that you add, the less time you really have to get everything in under pressure and all that kind of stuff before things start to go south. So it should be pretty fun though. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll to the top. It looked like it might be Mr. Gold's birthday. Is that what I saw? If so, happy birthday. I was kind of scrolling quick and I saw something was happening. Let's see. I'm just seeing if there's any other birthday weekend. That's cool. Happy birthday. Oh, your son is flying in. Nice. Well, that's no problem. Definitely have fun. Enjoy. Let's see. I don't think I missed anything else. Just one more thing. Usually words I say before blanks blow up. I know. And I had some excitement in my life. I found out that a rat was living in my truck and chewed up wire. I don't know if I told you. It's been going on for a week. I'm not sure if it was. I think I knew before, and that's been fun. I finally eradicated it. Haven't had any more issues or whatever. But man, I'll tell you what, guys. Do not get rodents in your car because it sucks. I don't know how much it's going to cost me, but probably thousands. The truck runs, luckily, still, but it chewed up all kinds of wires and I don't know what else. So not fun. It's been a week. I had to go to the dentist and get 2 fillings redone too. It's been a week, let's just say. But I'm doing okay now. Let's see. Geez, I'm still scrolling. You guys are just talking. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So if you haven't got your ornament in, it's over for the getting your ornament there. But yes, the auctions are coming up, so that is fun and it's super exciting, guys. They finally got it to where it's on eBay. The auction, they used to do it on Facebook, like it was just like posts, and it really took a lot of effort to actually to bid. Now they got it on eBay. Everything's super smooth. And you can go in there and there's like bidding wars at the end, and just like any other auction, it's really fun. So make sure to check that out. I don't have the link. Let's see if I can find the link real quick to their auction house or auction site. I think I can. Where do I send? Where? Nope. Timeline. Nope. Mission. Nope. Contest. Nope. They don't have a link to the things. Okay, so I can't find a direct link off their website right now, but it's coming up. I forget exactly when the auctions start, but they'll be coming up, and we'll all be sharing on the Instagrams and all that stuff and in videos. So David's got a question. So when painting inside of blanks to hide tubes, can you use acrylic paint? You can. I don't find that stuff. I don't like it personally. Let's just say, let's put it that way. There are people that use it. The problem I have is it's pretty thick. So what I recommend really is just to use spray paint. You can either do it one of 2 ways. I mean, you can just take your blank and just spray it. I usually do it like either outside or like over a trash can. Just spray in there. Even with that, you don't really want to just like blob it in there. You want to try to kind of maybe do 2 coats of it if possible. It's pretty tough though, because you're just spraying, into a tiny hole, so it ends up kind of flooding it. Now the other way you can do it, which works really well, is you take, just get yourself like a small cup. I mean, really small. Something, something like this. If you got those little mouthwash cup things, whatever, something like that. Spray the spray paint. Spray a good amount in a cup, and then take a paintbrush and just dip it in there, and you can, or like a Q-tip, and just paint the inside of the blank. And I would go with, like 2 or 3 coats, thin coats. What happens with the thick stuff is it ends up being so thick that your tube doesn't even fit in there, and that can be really a pain. So, you can, if you want to get into it and buy specialty drill bits just to do this, you could oversize the hole a little bit. I don't love that idea personally. I'd rather get the tube pretty close off the bat. But like I said, spray paint I think is the best way to go. The other thing is spray paint. If you find the one that, you know, like usually most of the ones on the rack at, like, you know, whatever your home center are meant to be able to be like a primer and whatever, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And they tend to stick to plastics better. That's the other issue, is acrylics don't necessarily stick to, you know, your plastics as well. So you can, I don't want to discourage you. If you've got like those little paint pots or acrylic paint sitting around, give it a shot, but try to paint on thin, like as thin a coat as you can. Maybe you could even thin it out possibly with water or something like that. They might even have like a thinning agent that's a little bit made. Typically acrylic paints could be thinned, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think you could thin it a little bit with some water. That might help. But I really think what I recommend is just go with the spray paint. When I switch, because I used to use the paint pots, I think I probably have some up here somewhere. I had tried a lot of things. Model paint is another good one that works really well. Nail polish could work even. But those thinner ones that are like lacquer based usually, like solvent based, usually tend to work a little bit better, I found. But when I actually got that spray paint tip from, man, I just went blank. I just totally went blank. Anyway, somebody on my live stream was like, oh, just spray some spray paint in a cup and then paint it in there. And ever since then, I'm like, oh my God, this is so much easier. It just works better. So you could, but if you have spray paint or are willing to try that out, I would recommend trying that. Let's see here. Scrolling down. December 2nd through 5th. Okay, cool. Thank you, Marquetta. Tire pressure. I'm not sure what the tire pressure comment is. Oh, you didn't have. Yeah, you can use acrylic. I mean, it'll work. It may not work as well. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's about it. Is there any other things? Man, like I said, guys, just when I think I'm starting to get on top of things, rats infest my truck. And then that worried us because we're like, oh God, is our house infested? And so like last week, not much got done. So I'm always behind, it seems like. I am getting on top of things. Now, just to let you know, there are a couple things on the blanks. So as you guys all know, I'm trying to get all my blanks converted to the round ones. And I got to be honest, guys, I'm really loving, I'm getting even better at the pours. And so as time goes on, I think the blanks are going to look even better. I think I got it pretty dialed in on getting really good patterning going on with most of them and all that stuff, minimal bleed, all that stuff. There are a few blanks that are difficult, as I've beat to death. Anything with yellow in it is a little bit difficult. So the two tough ones, the two really, man, they're tough, is black and yellow, and then like dark green or blue and yellow, but I usually just try to stay away from that if I can. But so like the Packers colors, those are going to be a little bit on the tougher side. And then the like Steelers colors, black and yellow, those two are the most difficult. There's just no way to avoid a little bit of bleed. And I mean, there's like a tiny bit, it's not even bleed. It's just that if there's like a thin layer of yellow on top of something darker, it just kind of shows through a little bit. I wouldn't really even call it bleed. But you do see that, which, you know, red and white can kind of give you a little bit lighter red sometimes, but it just doesn't look as like noticeable. So and I'm mentioning this for two reasons. If you get blanks and there's like a little bit of that, there's just no way to not have like a little bit of bleed in a blank or that kind of issue. But if you're making blanks, you know, bleed is one thing. I mean, you'll see and it just looks like garbage. But if there's just a little bit of that kind of where it's like a thin layer next to each other, it may just kind of, like I said, lighten the color or something like that. Slightly change it where it's meeting like a lighter color. But yellow is the tough one. Be ready for a little bit of bleed if there's yellow. Now, having said that, I've got the Niner blanks are back in stock. I really love the new ones. I think I got the gold. I'm loving that. And the red color is good. So those are a really good one. I just added those to the website if you're looking for them. I've got a couple that are kind of out of stock. Somebody just wiped me out on the Washington Commanders blanks. They're going to be back in stock next week. And I added, I was out of Opal Pearls. They're back in stock. So like lots of things are getting back in stock, and things are getting converted. The next one, I'm trying to think if there's something that's out. I don't think there's anything that I'm out of stock of, that like I ran out of the squares and I haven't replenished with rounds yet. But man, like I said, I'm really getting excited about these things. I love the colors. Everything's going pretty good so far. Now it's just like time. I gotta get blanks made to get these things stocked all back up. So anyway, having said that, let's do some casting. Let's do it. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna do 2 of these tall boys. And like I said, I already did a couple batches. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to show you the blanks. I want you guys to see what I make, and then we'll see what we get for the finish. Now, I will say I wasn't able to get all the blanks that I need to cover all the boxes. Very close, but I needed to do this one. Actually, I think I just needed 4 more. So how I'm going to handle this is there are a few people that are really close, like live close to me. All the people that are like on the East Coast, you guys are getting your boxes sent out tomorrow with the blanks that I had already made. And then there's, like I said, just like probably 4 that I'm short on. You guys, it's going to take, I'm going to wait until Wednesday to ship those just to make sure the blanks are totally cured and ready. I like to wait. Let's kind of stop. It is winter. We're doing winter blanks. So if you need to ship things, and this goes into the curing time and all that kind of stuff. What I found is when I first started selling blanks, I didn't realize, I kind of figured, okay, if it's ready to be pulled out of the pressure pot, it should be like good. The problem is it's still curing. So like when they say, Alumilite Clear has a 5-day clear or slow, has a 5-day full cure schedule at like room temperature, 72 degrees or something like that. So 5 days, right? That's the full cure. And the way that these things work, urethanes tend to cure a lot. They have like a kind of an exponential curve where like in a couple days, they're probably like at like 50% or more cured, right? And then it just kind of tapers off, and like those remaining days, it just kind of cures a little bit more and a little bit more. I don't know what the exact percentages are, but definitely wait like 3 days if you're doing Alumilite, like a urethane that has like a 5-day cure schedule. Urethanes, like I said, they cure really fast initially. Like the first 24 hours, they cure a lot. They get pretty hard and everything. You probably noticed that. Epoxies are different. They have just a linear cure line. So if it's a 7-day cure, after 3.5 days, it's 50% cured. So you really have to watch out for epoxies. But what can happen? I want to go back to what the point is of this. Where there's worry is you have to kind of watch temperatures in your shop. You don't want to let a blank that hasn't fully cured sit around in like freezing temperatures, because what happens is at a certain temperature point, low temperature, cold, coolness, it will halt the curing completely. So, if you take the blanks, if you got your shop heated and it's all nice and 70 degrees or whatever, 65, 70, and you pour your blanks, you put them in the pressure pot, you take them out, and then like let them just sit in your shop overnight, and the shop like dips down into really cold territory, you may have a curing problem with your blanks. What I've found, they tend to get kind of powdery and crumbly and just not very awesome. So always make sure that you're giving your blanks, a good amount of time in the proper amount of, like the proper temperature, let's say, like a high enough temperature to cure. I think if you need to ship blanks, I don't think that you necessarily have to wait a full 5 days. I think 3 or 4 is probably good, but to be sure, wait 5 days with the blanks sitting in like 70 or so degrees, and you should be good. And there are ways to accelerate the cure using like an oven, like temperature, like heat it up. Look, whatever resin you're using, look up the instructions. They tell you, they call it post-curing. There's a schedule for it, and they'll tell you what temperature, how many hours, and all this kind of stuff if you want to accelerate that cure time. so that you can do whatever you want. And that also works for turning them. Now for the turning, going back to, waiting for full cure, the biggest deal is a fully cured blank is going to polish the best. That's the main thing. And it also will not shrink anymore once it's fully cured. I think the biggest issue, I always kind of say that I wait a few days before I drill out blanks if I'm putting tubes in, or even for turning, I say, realistically, I turn blanks the next day all the time when I'm doing tests. They turn fine. They're going to be softer. They turn actually easier almost sometimes. But the problem is if you're going to glue a tube in and you do it like the next day and you haven't done a post-curing schedule or anything like that, it's going to shrink a little bit, not significantly, but it could even deform your tube. So that's a reason to kind of hold off on doing tubes. If you're doing threading, definitely wait till they're fully cured because your threads are going to be messed up if it shrinks a little bit. Resins all kind of shrink a little bit. They all have different amounts of shrinkage during the curing schedule. But so I just want to kind of cover a couple things with this curing while I'm like mentioning it. I think that's about it. But like I said, the biggest thing is the temperatures. And the reason I say like when you're shipping, these things are going to go in the belly of a plane. I don't know what temperatures they're reaching, but even in the summer, it's probably a lot cooler than sitting in the cabin. That's my assumption. Maybe if anybody knows more about how shipping works, but I think they go in the cargo hold and it isn't temperature regulated down there. So I'm always a little bit worried about shipping things too early before they've cured. So anyway, just the PSA for the day is let your blanks cure fully. Even with the polishing, I don't know that you need to necessarily wait a whole 5 days just to turn it and polish it, but it will give you it'll be as hard as it's going to get. That's going to give you the best polishing. And even with sanding, if you try and sand and polish something and it's really soft, it tends to gum up your sandpaper more. And then you're like basically wiping plastic on plastic. If your sandpaper gums up, even with water, they can get kind of gummy and load up. And you're really just not doing a good job. You're going to end up finding scratches and stuff. So it's better to wait for, I would say, at least like 3 days on like Alumilite before you start really trying to polish stuff. 5 days obviously is the best. So anyway, let's see here. You got blanks bought from exactly a year ago. I think they're cured now. 5 days, that's it. I'm just saying, it's good to know when you poured. And that's why I always put dates in my book so I know when blanks are ready to rock and roll. All right, so let's see here. I think that's about it. Let's go for some casting. So, pulling out my book. And I already have like a recipe, kind of, or whatever, my directions on this. Let's see here. Where did it go? There it is. Get my book ready here. Okay, so this one's, like I said, going to be a little bit complicated because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of dirty pour on part of it. Not the whole thing, but I'm going to do a couple colors dirty. And we're going to add a little bit of fun to these things, I think. So today is 11/15, I believe. That's right. Yeah. Winter blanks. And we're going to be using 2 of these 2 times 8.5 inch P-Town. And we're going to be using Alumilite Clear Slow. All right. Now, all right, so on the P-Town Subby website, Fred mentions that these take about 75 grams each one of these holes. So we are going to mix up, let's see, I just want to make sure that my math is correct here. Yep. We're going to mix up 600 grams total. So that'll be 300 grams of part A, 300 of part B. And then I already did some messing around. Like I said, I already poured this, and the way that I want to pour this blank, I want to pour, we've got white, we're going to have some blues, and then some browns. All right, so the brown, again, the idea behind the brown is like trees in like a meadow. Just little thin amounts of brown. We don't want a big blob of brown. There's not big blobby trees unless it's a stump. So we want to try to get that kind of thin pour. So that's going to be a very small amount. And then for the blues, here's what I want to do with those. I want to go for interference blue. I think that'll give you that kind of icy translucence, a little bit of, I don't want to call it like shimmer. It's not shimmer, but you guys know how interference powders work. There's like this depth to them, like an aurora kind of look. So we'll add a bit of that, interference blue, and then we're going to mix that with some, let's see, no, that's the blue, that's the main blue. But what I also want to do is, I know, and this sounds really complicated, but I have a whole game plan. All right, guys. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to mix up white. I'm going to dump some in the bottom and make kind of the snowy meadow, right? So it's just going to be white in some portion of the bottom. Then I'm going to go with some blue and white mixed. All right, and so that's where the dirty pour comes in. We're going to go for just some blue. We're going to use the ocean blue translucent dye. We're going to mix up a cup of that, where, I mean, this is like see-through, basically, just blue tinted resin. We're going to mix that with some white, and that's where this starts to get a little bit complicated with how you have the cups laid out. The way I'm going to have to do this is in the mixing cup, I'm going to create the white. I'm going to add the white dye, and then I'm going to add the macro pearl. Mix that all up, but what I have to do is dump part of that white off into a different cup, because I want a very specific amount of white to just be dumped in the bottom, and I want to be able to just dump that out and empty the cup and know that I've, put a specific amount in the bottom. Then I'm going to have this other cup of white, but I also have the translucent blue, a little bit of that, and we're going to just dirty pour those together to where it's kind of white and blue mixed, and then we're going to pour the interference blue at the same time with the that mixture type thing. So hopefully that kind of made sense. It's very complicated, but when you're starting to do this, where you want to put like some amount down here, and then you're going to be like dirty pouring some part of it, and then mixing stuff together sort of, and then also adding a little bit of brown, it gets complicated with your cups. So you really want to make sure that you understand like what cups do I need laid out, how's this all going to work, what are the steps. Even do a dry run, sit there and be like, okay, here's my mixing cup with the white. I need, and I'll just lay out what I'm going to be making. I need a very small cup. This is a 3 ounce. I like having lots of different sizes of cups. So I got a 3 ounce. This is going to be for the brown. All right. And then I'm going to do, let's see here. I'm going to do, I can probably do like 2 of these plastic cups. This is going to house the white. This is what I'm going to dump the white off. Again, the mixing cup is going to be where I get the powder and the dye and create my entire amount of white. But I only want a specific amount of white left to pour in first, so I'm going to need to know that. This is going to be the cup where I pour out some of the white and do the dirty pour. And then for the dirty pour, that blue, I'm going to mix up, I don't know how much, 50. I guess I could do this again also. So another 3 ounce cup. We don't need a lot of that blue. We're just going to kind of mix it in and dirty pour it into this cup of white. That cup will be gone. So when all is said and done, this cup is going to be gone because I'm going to have already poured it in the bottom. And again, just to reiterate, white dye is really heavy. So if you're going to put that on one end of the blank, I would pour your white in first. Even if it seems like it's an upside down blank or something, you're doing it in reverse. Pour the heaviest stuff in the bottom. Otherwise, if you try to just stack the white on the top, a lot of times it'll end up just sinking through. So the white's going to be poured in already. We've got our white, blue, interference blue is going to be in this cup, and then we're going to be kind of pouring these at the same time to kind of blend them together. And in the middle of that, we're going to pour just a thin strip of brown. Okay, so it should be kind of crazy. Hopefully you guys will see where, when we get into this, it gets so complicated that you really want to know what the plan is ahead of time. You really, either that or, and I'm going to be completely honest, we're going to go with serious cam right now. Serious cam, this is face cam. I already poured these, right? Tell you what, guys, the first one, I totally didn't do it. Like things were not ready. What happened was I didn't get my blue in a separate cup, and like things got kind of out of control, and I was like, oh man, you know, I'd already poured all the white dye in, and I actually had to mix up some extra blue on the side, which is not what you want all your resins to be kind of setting up at the same temperature. So, you know, you might even screw up the first time, and then you're like, oh, I got to do it this way. So even if you plan well, you've got all kinds of experience doing resin, you may screw something up. So don't worry about it. And what I find is you may get a result because of having to change the way you thought you were going to pour them, and you go, oh, maybe it's not what I wanted, but it's cool. It's different. Or maybe it'll suck, and that, you know, that's not fun. But worst case scenario, pour another batch. You learned a lesson, you know. So don't get too worried about it. All right, so let me write my notes down, because like I said, I got this all figured out. The second round, I got everything totally knocked down. And the other issue is, on that first pour, you may find like, oh, I really need to tweak the numbers. Like, especially when you're doing like dirty pours and pouring different things together and doing them all, and trying to get a blank like some amount, you know, in the bottom here and there. You may find like, oh, I really need to increase the amount of, you know, one or the other, one color or another. Let's see here. So we're going to do, and in fact, I'm actually going to make a change, because we're going to do something a little different. We're going to go 200 grams for the white at the bottom. 200 white. I'm going to call an audible. And the nice thing is I've done 2 batches, and each one, you know, now we're doing a third one. I'm going to do it a little different. I'm going to see what the results are. That's one of the nice things about pouring blanks. You know, if you do different ways, you can kind of look and compare, okay, you know, how did this work out? Let's see here. Yeah, okay, I see where, yeah. We're going to go with, yeah. Sorry guys, I'm thinking about stuff. So what I want to do actually is, I'm actually going to bump this up to 250 is what we're going to be left with the white. I'm going to adjust some of these numbers. We're going to do, because I had numbers for the second pour, but I'm actually going to change them. Yeah, we're going to change a couple things. Let's go. Okay, let me just make sure that I got my, you know me guys, I like to call an audible sometimes. Wait, that's not right. 250. Why don't I have this right? Did I screw up the numbers before? Somehow it worked out. Let's see here. Hold on. 300 plus 200 is 300 plus 200 plus 100. Yeah, that's 600. 250. I want that total to be, let's see, that's 2 and 2, 4. I want that to drop down to 300. I'm going to do 50 of brown. Let's see, why is this number not working? That's only 200. So 100. 100 plus, I want to do like 30 plus 130. 130. Hold on a minute. Sometimes the numbers are not very exciting. Okay, so this needs to be 2. Why is this not working? 100. Let's just do 50. That's why. Okay. Okay, so we're doing 250 of white. We're doing 100 is going to be another white that I'm going to dump off into this cup. 50 is going to be the ocean blue. 150 is going to be interference blue, and 50 is going to be brown. And for the brown, what I'm going to use is, you could use, so if you have Divine, they got one called chocolate, or no, brownie batter. That would be a really good one to use. You could use a mica. I'm looking for like a solid color. I don't really want the trees to be sparkly. So I have one that is just a premix that I like the color. So I'm just going to use mine. We got our interference blue, which would be the same as like ghost blue. I wonder if I have ghost somewhere in here. I don't know if I have the blue version. Yeah, I do. Let's go with ghost blue on this one. Let's see how that goes. I don't have a whole lot in there. Let's see, how much am I going to need? Should be enough. So we can use our eye candy ghost blue, or interference blue. It's all the same thing. Let's see here. We're going to do, and then brown. Okay, so we got all of our stuff. We need white. I'm going to do 1%, I believe. Yes. 1% white dye. So again, I'm going to be using, if you got the Divine pigments, that's what I'm using. Alumilite white would be the same thing. You probably need to add a little bit more with the Alumilite white. It's a little bit less concentrated than Divine, but whatever. So we got 2.5 grams plus, I want to add 1. I think it's going to be 1.5. Let's see. I'm just going to do some math here. 150 divided by 1. No, 1 divided by... Yeah, 1.5 teaspoons of macro sparkle should work. Probably get away with 1, but I'd rather try and load it up. Now this second white, I don't need to do anything because I'm going to already be mixing this white. This is where things get complicated because I have 2 cups, but I'm doing all the steps to get it ready in the mixing cup. I just need to dump it off once it's ready. Our ocean blue, we're going to add, let's see here, we did 50. We're going to do 0.5 grams of ocean blue dye. I'm going to stop and look at the comments. I've been trying to get all this stuff sorted out real quick. Let's see, 200. We're going to do, I'm going to look and see what an 1/8 teaspoon of the ghost. I may go up to a 1/4 teaspoon. Just kind of see how it looks. And then with the brown, I'm going to go with 1 gram of the dye. I'm going to kind of load it up. We want it to be kind of, you know, dark. It's going to be thin strips. Hopefully, you know, when I pour it, it's going to be kind of thin little wisps of brown. And so the less brown dye you put in there, if it's a very small amount, the more like kind of translucent it may be, or just less evident. So sometimes if you're doing very small bits of it, you might need to add a little bit more dye to get it a little bit more like dark and show up a little bit more. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll up and see if anybody says anything. Ken Norwood's here. How's it going? Okay, I think I started doing, yeah, I'm telling you guys, well, I mean, it depends. Okay, so I know that Jake doesn't, I don't think Jake does, I don't think he writes anything down. If your goal, if you are like, I don't really care if I ever do this again, you don't need to write things down. Now, I will say though, even with the process, even if you're not trying to recreate blanks, I think it's very helpful to create a plan. Like, especially with these complicated things, like if I didn't have this written down, it would be a nightmare for me, at least, right? I need to have like steps and like, okay, how's this all going, and get things set up. Otherwise, it's going to turn into a nightmare, and I'm not going to get blanks. They're just not even going to be close to what I want, or I'm going to just make mistakes. So, you know, even for just the process, it's nice to have kind of your plan written down, even if you're really never going to go back and look at it. But if you ever want to recreate them, man, it really, or if you're like trying to like tweak them, like I said, I mean, this will be the 3rd set of blanks that I make like this. If you're trying to hone in on something, if you didn't really follow your, write down a plan and follow the steps, I mean, you're never gonna get there. It's just based on my experience. That's how things were working when I first started. I would just keep trying to do things, and I would just be running circles and wasting blanks because I was never really adjusting correctly, or I forgot what I did, or whatever. So let's see. Made your first successful kit list. Nice. Yeah, they're fun, and I think people are a little bit intimidated by them, but they're not. There's a lot of steps, and again, this is another one of those things where as long as you write down your steps that you need to follow, it's really not that complicated. You just say, okay, step one, I got to drill this out or whatever, do the tapping, do this, and they're really pretty cool. Like my first one, I mean, again, it was one of those. It wasn't spectacular by any means, but it worked out. It was fine for a first. It wrote. All the things went together. Wasn't perfect for sure. Yeah, Ken. That's where I do these team colors, and like the recipes things are a little bit better now. One of the other reasons why I switched from the white, so I was using Alumilite white, and the problem with Alumilite white is, if you mix part A and part B, don't do anything else to it, it's going to turn solid white. Okay, so your dye recipes have to account for the fact that the resin itself is adding white in there, and that's like an unknown variable kind of. So my dye recipes had to be so precise. I mean, we're talking, that's why I use, that's one of the main reasons why I use a 0.1 scale, so 0.1 grams. And I mean, frankly, there are some cases where I could have used or hundredths scale. It didn't turn out. I've tried them and they don't really work out that well. But things have to be so precise to get them to work out. And if you change the amount of resin, it throws things off sometimes. And so the nice thing is if you can pre-mix, with like divine pigments, if you can pre-mix them, if you're using clear, there's none of that variable. So it makes things a little easier. You just dump, your dye in, and whatever the dye, it's more based on the pre-mixed dye. So it makes things easier, but it can be tough. It can be tough, that's for sure. It gets real when we switch to serious cam. I know, I'm telling you. Let's see here. Yeah, the Rolodex, that's a good way to go. Okay, so let's get going here. Brown, interference, okay. Mixing cup. Let's get started here. So it doesn't matter. I don't need to I could put an 1/8 teaspoon of this Ghost blue in. It's not really saving me that much, and I'm not sure if I want an 1/8 or a 1/4, so I'm just gonna do that later. Okay, so I got all my stuff. Sometimes it helps me to. I don't need to worry about this one right now. I'm not doing anything. I'm not even dumping the resin in. So what I'm going to do is turn this cup over so I know that I don't need to pour anything in there. I'll have all my resin in this guy. I do need to pour resin in all 3 of these cups though, okay? So 50, 50, and then 150. That's what I need to pour off before I start doing any adding of colors. And like I said, it helps me to think about and visualize and all this stuff. Otherwise, things go a little bit crazy. Let's see. Oh, I had a note. Use the 5-ounce cups because the 3-ounce cups were pretty small. Helps to mix it up a little bit if you got a little bit more room. So that was smart. So that's why I write notes. I was just double checking if I had any extra. Oh, and one other thing, I need the macro sparkle. That's another thing that I need. So those two go together. This guy goes there. I'm just going to put this here for now. And then we got it all going here. And let's see. I'm going to probably pour this at... the temperatures are... Oh my God. The temperature and the thickness of the resin is just killing me, guys. I think I'm going to probably start pouring around 90. We'll see how everything goes. I'm going to kind of see, it really helps to understand like what viscosity, like how is this supposed to look depending on your temperature, but that is tough for me too. So around 90, it's about 68 in my shop, and I may give it a little bit of a swirl, maybe. Let's see, probably not. Don't think I did a swirl. 2, 3, 1 cup. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just double checking my notes before I get to the point of no return. Yeah, the macro sparkle is definitely the fun component. It really, I'm telling you guys, if you're going for snow, little bit, you got to watch out. I wouldn't, you know, point like 0.5% to 1%. I would not go over 1%. You know, so if you have 100 grams of resin, put in 1 gram. Is that right? No, that's not even right. Hold on a minute. Yeah, 100 grams, put 100 grams of resin, 1 gram, you know, so 1%. That is the absolute top. I think 0.5%, and that's for like if you're doing like every one is going to be different. So like Alumilite dye is a little weaker. You can probably go possibly even twice that much and get like about the same amount of like opacity or whatever. But if you're going for more translucent, 1%, you know, 0.5%, 0.5% is a good one. 1% is pretty good if you're going for a little bit more solid, which I'm going for a little bit more solid. So we need 300 grams of Part A. And I want to be pretty, you know, again, this is where the, you know, being very accurate is kind of important on this one. Oftentimes I get a little bit OCD on things, and you don't really, you know, it's not going to change the end result that much. But in this case, I really want to have my resin amounts, how much I pour in each cup and all that stuff. They really need to be where they're at, because what's left in the mixing cup is going to be what I pour to get a certain amount. Now, does it matter that much? I mean, they're going to be variable. I can't even see in here, you know, there's going to be some variance blank to blank, but I do want to have like kind of the right amount, and I want to empty that cup completely with the white in the bottom. So sometimes it is a little bit more important than other times to kind of really do the right measuring when you're doing all this stuff. Oftentimes it does not matter. I am admittedly very OCD, and I think it drives some people up a wall, and that's fine. But it also has, when I see people just nonchalantly just flinging micas around, drives me up a wall. I'm like, oh my God, who knows what you're going to get? So it goes both ways. All right, so we're mixing. You always want to scrape the bottom and the sides of the cup, of course. Get all those Part A's and Part B's mixed. And this looks like, I'm telling you guys, I just bought, what I'm finding is I think that like when you first pop open a jug of resin, I've been doing this for 15 years and I should know this, but the truth is I've had to really, you know, we were talking about the pigments, the liquid pigments, these team colors that I'm switching to. They can be pretty finicky about the thickness of the resin and the temperature, the timing and all that stuff, especially certain colors. They just are a little bit more prone to bleeding. And so you kind of have to have things dialed down to get the results that you want. And when the viscosity changes of the resin, I mean, good Lord. Then it changes your temperatures, and all kinds of things go sideways. And literally, I feel like the difference between 70 degrees and 67, 68 has had an effect on, I mean, we're talking 2 to 3 degrees ambient temperature seems to have had an effect. But what I think I'm finding is that fresh, brand new resin, I almost need to open it and let it sit for a week, because it seems to thicken up once you open it a little bit. I just never really, I don't know. Does anybody else have noticed that at all? I'm just kind of curious. Now I'm getting perfectly, there's nothing wrong with the resin. There was a problem with that one resin. I think I got moisture contamination. It was not operating correctly, but man, the viscosity, I really need a shop that is just locked in at one temperature. It really, if you have the ability to do that, you are going to make your life so much easier when it comes to resin, I think. Typically with pearl powders, though, I never ran into an issue with that with pearls. I mean, you could be within a range of temperatures and they tend to work fine. Sometimes things that are prone to bleeding, man, whew. Even the way I pour things changes things. So it's been kind of a learning experience. But I'm getting things locked down. It's pretty cool. Hey, what's up, Mike? Okay, I think that is mixed to death. So, got to do this right. 150 grams. This is going to be the interference blue. And I mean, does it have to be 150.0? No, but like it needs to be pretty close. You know, I need to be in the range here. 150, that's the interference. And then these two are going to take 50 grams each. So once you have the plan, this isn't really that super ridiculously complicated. But like I said, I found out the first time I tried this, I screwed up. I made a whoopsie. And it had to do with this initial, like how much, you know, pouring the resin into these different cups. So that was 50.4. I'm fine with that. That's fine. I'm not going to worry. Even if this was like 55, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I don't want to be way off. Whoa. Okay, 50.4. Okay, I just want to double check and make sure, like I said, I screwed up that one. I'm going to get my white ready, then I'm going to pour some of that white mixture into this guy. This is interference, and then these two are dyes. So we're just going to put these guys over here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look, like I said, I'm not sure. I think an 1/8 teaspoon will be enough of the interference. I want this to be pretty translucent. I want it to have that kind of like depth that you would see in ice. And again, this is where how much resin and how much mica powder you're putting in is going to have an effect on the outcome of the way these blanks look. And that's why I get a little bit crazy with the, when I see people just be like, I don't know, it's about a scoop. There would be a difference between 1/8 and 1/4 teaspoon in this 150 grams. Maybe not significant, but enough. So what I'm looking for, that's pretty good. I think I'm going to add, and this is where things go out the window. What I really want is like another like 1/16 teaspoon, which is kind of ridiculous, but I'm going to add a little bit more and just kind of see how that looks and compare it. This is the point of no return. I add more and it's not like I can take any out. But I think if I just do kind of like a 1/2, I wanted a little bit more body to it or whatever, a little less transparency. One thing I'm not thinking of is we're not tubing these. That's another, you know, if you're going to do a tube, it does change things, but I do want this to have, yeah, that's fine. Could have probably even gone up to 1/4, I bet, but that's fine. So we're going to do an 1/8. What is that, 3/16? It's kind of ridiculous, but I'm going to write this in my notes. We're doing an 1/8 plus a 1/16 teaspoon. Okay, so that guy's good. Wipe off my spoon and we're good. Okay, get this out of the way. Now, we're going for 2.5 grams of white dye, and that's going into 250 grams of resin. That's 1%. And again, I do want to get that pretty close, because it will have an effect on things. If you add a bunch of, if I went to like 3% of this white dye, then you probably, it really could kill your macro sparkle. It may do that. And I really, you could probably even go with 0.5% of this, you know, the divine pigment. Most of these, like the liquid pigments like that, Alumilite's different. It's actually weak, I would say. Not as concentrated, but the divine pigments, that stuff, you really don't need to add much to get pretty opaque, you know, white. Now we're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of macro, and you'll be able to know by pulling it out on the stick if you've got, you know, if you overdid it, or, you know, if you're not going to be able to see the macro for some reason, you'll know before you even pour them or anything. It'll be glittery and fun. But just be a little bit warned, you know, sometimes if you add too much of the dye, then, you know, macro sparkles or pearls or, you know, anything like that could be kind of muted quite a bit. So you may have to go down a little bit, depending. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's glistening, it's nice. Let me get on the camera here. Looks just like snow. And we got ocean blue. I'm going to do 0.5 grams. This is another one where it's going to be pretty much transparent no matter what I do, but this is one where sometimes it can be a little, you kind of need to get the right amount of even transparent dye. Red, yellow from Alumilite, I don't care how much you put in, it's still going to just be transparent. But some of these things that get a little darker, if you don't put enough in, it looks like it's like blue or something, you know, whatever in the cup. But if you turn it way down, if it's a super thin piece, there may not be any color left. So you might need to go a little higher than you want. That might even have been a little much, but that's okay. So trying to get like the perfect transparency in the final pen, that can be tough. And you might have to do a few attempts to get it where you want it in the final pen. And depending on how thick that pen is going to change things even. I went a little over on the brown. That's fine. I don't care about that so much. Okay, so we are probably, I was kind of messing around there. So I'm probably ready. Let's see, I need to dump off this white. So we want 100 grams of white in here. That's close enough, that's fine. And then the remainder of this white is, I'm going to try to evenly kind of pour these. I want about the same amount in the bottom. And I'm actually doing kind of like a 2 count here in my head. That, I mean, it's definitely not perfect, but it can kind of get you in the ballpark, and then, you know, you just look down in there, see where you're at. One of them will probably be a little lower. This one's pretty high already. This one's pretty good. That one's good. These 4 are pretty good. These 2, let's see, this one needs a little bit. Needs a little bit. Like I said, I'm trying to get this fairly even. Doesn't have to be perfect, but all right, so we got that white down in the bottom. Let's see what our temperature is at this point. I think it's already getting to where I want it to be. Oh God, yep. We're way past what I wanted it to be. But I think it's going to be fine. So I'm going to, oh, I totally screwed that up. See, no matter what I do, I still screwed it up. But I think this is going to be cool. That's what happens. Timer goes off, and then you screw something up. But actually, this might, so this is a screw up, but I think it might actually be kind of cool. All right. So I need to put these like this, I think. We're going to do a double pour at the same time here. What I wanted was even amounts of resin in each one of these cups, but I did not get that, so. And I screwed the brown up too. So, it happens, guys. I feel like I have too much resin here. My recommendation is don't do pours on a live stream, and you tend to do better. There seems like way too much resin. Quite thin for being 98 degrees too. I don't know. Still think, even though I didn't do exactly what I wanted, I have 3, so if you're in the pen blank club, there's 3 possible totally different blanks that you might get. But I think all of them are actually pretty cool. So my recommendation might be to just do 4 blanks at a time on complicated things, just because things can get a little out of control. Like I said, I think these are going to be pretty interesting, actually. Adding the blue dye to the interference blue is actually going to change things a little bit on that. Now this is dripping all over the place. Wonderful. I have a wooden thing in the bottom of this. Okay. Okay, whatever. Well, we got them made. Everything's good to go. We'll have to see how these ones turn out. I'll probably turn one of these guys. Like I said, I did a few other batches, but I think this is the one that I'm going to turn. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how this one turns out. Couple of things that maybe that could kind of significantly change the way these blanks look, or like the results on these kind of things. One of the big ones is actually just changing the, that brown. I added that to the blue, where you'd probably, and that's what I meant to do in this one, but the other thing that you could do is add that, like kind of go back and forth, add a little bit of a splash of that to the white, which technically, I guess, the more I think about it, is more the tree thing. So if I went back and did a 4th batch of these, I think I would actually do that, add the brown in with the white at some point, like probably still lay down a baseline of white, because I want like a meadow, right? That's in my head, that's kind of what's going on with these things. And then I would come back with white and kind of go back, like do like multiple pours where I'm just kind of adding a thin bit of brown into the white, then come on and add, white and blue. So there's lots of different ways, using the same exact resin and everything, like same amounts and all that kind of stuff. Depending on how you kind of pour things, you could get significantly different results in the blanks. And so that's always something kind of fun to kind of keep in mind when you're making blanks. The steps, let's say, or like how you do the steps, really does matter, and it can affect what the resulting blanks actually look like. In some cases, pretty significantly, like how, what steps, what time did you pour, in what order did you pour things. And again, that goes back to why I'm pretty adamant about keeping records of all this stuff, right? You know, having that book. Man, there's a lot of extra resin. Seems like. Because if you're really kind of going for a very specific look, if you're not, then does it matter as much? Not necessarily, you know. If you're happy with whatever the blank gives you, which is a good way to go, because the blanks are oftentimes not going to give you what you what you want. You're pouring liquids, you know. So sometimes it's kind of tough to get that. But if you are after like a very specific thing, then I mean the only way to do it is to systematically, you know, try this with, you know, this much resin and these steps, and then go back, and if that didn't give you what you wanted, you know, tweak things and try to know. Now, it doesn't help when you screw things up in the middle and do things out of order, or pour the, you know, whatever in the wrong color thing. But that's going to go in the notes, okay? So in this case, I didn't even follow what was in my book or what I had initially planned to do. So I'm going to write down like, oh, I accidentally put the ocean blue in with the interference blue. And so when I look at what the results are, I know, oh, okay, that's what that combination would give me. And again, it may not be so much that it matters for this specific blank, but then down the road, if you're like, oh, you know what I really need is this, you know, some specific thing in this blank, then you go back and say, oh, how did I do that with the winter blanks that I was trying? Oh yeah, the third time I added ocean blue to the interference blue, and that's what I got in it. So it just, I just feel like it helps, even if you really don't need it today, right now. It could be useful to have that information and the specifics down the road. Worst case scenario, if you need to have something. And that's why I always am like, don't get mad if you kind of screwed something up. You may need that specific thing down the road. So anyway, pretty fun. This is going to be a kind of a quick one today, guys, because that's all we got, basically. Try and think. I'm going to scoot this back. One thing to note, you don't need to have a 5-gallon pressure pot for those P-Town subby 8.5-inch tall ones. They will easily fit in one of these. They're a little close if you have a CA Technologies. CA Technologies is wider and shorter, where California, which I don't recommend buying CA Technologies today, they're just overpriced. The CA Technologies ones are a little bit skinnier and a little bit taller, and so they fit perfect. The one thing I will say, if you've got 8.5-inch tall molds in a 2.5-gallon pot, be aware of where they are in the pot and how much pressure. Like, I would not recommend slamming on your air and like cranking it to full bore to like let the most air in, because what ends up happening is you got a little valve thing in the pot, and what can happen is if you've got it on full bore, it's just blowing the resin off the top of your blank. So if you walk in and find like there's a splatter of resin, or even if you don't necessarily notice that, but the level somehow is like way lower in like 1 or 2 but you had it full, it's because when you pressurized it blew the resin off. So just be aware of that. They do fit fine in a 2.5-gallon, but it's so close to that air intake that it can kind of blow the resin over. A little bit easier in a 5-gallon. You don't really have to worry about that, but 5-gallon pots are just kind of a pain. I really don't like using them personally. And one other thing to keep in mind is a 5-gallon pot is going to take twice as long to get filled with air than a 2.5. If you're really running up, you got something super complicated and you're running up against the clock, it is a little bit better. You're going to get it to pressure a little bit. We're talking a few seconds. It's not a big deal, but sometimes that may be the difference. So let's see here. Mike's been summoned for lunch. Well, enjoy your lunch. That'll be fun. So like I said, we got done pretty early today. Does anybody have any like random questions? I've been kind of blabbering, talking about random stuff. I always like to try to share as many things as I can think of. Especially a lot of times when it's like a pitfall, like I learned this lesson, don't do the same thing kind of things. This will definitely cause you issues kind of things. I find those to be like the most important tips. A lot of times you can tell people how to do things, and that's wonderful to get, perfect results. But more importantly, if you tell people how not to do things, then the rest of it, they can have fun doing whatever, experimenting. But if you stay away from these one things that are going to definitely cause you problems, it'll save you money and frustration. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, like I said, I'm a little disappointed that when things get complicated, I got to pour this into that one and this, and I don't pour into this one right away. It gets complicated if you're not like just totally focused. And even, the first batch, I was obviously focused and I still screwed it up. It gets tough if you're not just like, okay, 3 equal cups of some stuff, pour them together, whatever. But if you're having to do things a specific way and like, just a thin amount of the brown and I got to do this and that, it starts to get a little bit hard to remember, especially when you're like, what really kills you is when you take the temperature and you're 8 degrees higher than you wanted to be at this point. You're like, oh God, I got to hurry. And you start hurrying, and that's when things go sideways. But the beauty of this is I've got 3 different ways that they actually got poured at this point. None of them, actually, the first 2 batches look about the same. They're just slightly different. There's a little bit of a difference to them, but I think that these are actually going to look a little bit different than those other 2. Not significantly, though. Again, bottom line, all 3 of these batches have a bottom of white. Okay, so the bottom part of the blank is white. That's not going to change pretty much. And then there's some blue and brown going on the top. Now, the way that I poured them together are slightly different, but I have a feeling that really they're probably all going to look about the same. But there may be a little bit of a difference in the blue, especially that interference. Sometimes like that, the way interference colors work, they diffract light weirdly compared to just like a normal mica powder, and what really makes them like really pop and like this color comes out at you, in this case blue. They almost look kind of milky white, but then there's this like aura of, aurora blue kind of thing that comes out. But if you have a dark color, something darker next to it, it really pops that color out. So that may happen in these. I don't know. We'll have to see. I think I've made enough blanks at this point. Let's see. Yeah, I've made enough blanks. I can actually turn down a sample of this and something else and kind of compare them. But so next week we're going to start working on a bespoke pen out of one of these blanks. That should be fun. I really enjoy, like, I really feel like if you're making bespoke blanks, there's so much room for that translucence and transparency that doesn't come at a cost. The only cost that comes is you're going to have to, if it's very transparent, you're going to have to sand the inside of the pen, the blank or whatever, to get it not scratchy and yucky looking on the inside. That's the only cost, I guess. It's not that big of a deal, though. It doesn't take that much work to get them sanded and polished on the inside. But if you take that step and get them nice and polished, having that transparency on a bespoke pen is excellent. You get a lot of depth with your colors, and it's just cool. Like in some cases, the demonstrator style, which basically just means see-through. You can see the inner workings of the pen. It really is pretty cool. Do I have a demonstrator up front, but I don't have anything back here. But it's see-through. You can see the where the ink's being held and all that kind of stuff. It really adds a lot of fun to a fountain pen, I think, or a rollerball, even if you have that. I always like being able to see the insides of things. I like seeing the threads and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of adds a little bit of fun, I think. I don't know. Yeah, you don't need to sand the insides if you can't see the inside. I mean, if you want to, you can say, "Oh, I even sand the inside," and you know, charge $5 more, but I would probably not do that. So let's see here. Any other questions? Yeah, so if that was the question, let me just scroll. Let's see. Wow, where is it? Yeah. Yeah. So only if it's transparent, even if it's like translucent, a lot of times you really don't need to. Maybe just hit it with like the 600 grit to get to just knock down the roughness. If you use a good, it doesn't have to be good. If you use a lubricant when you're drilling, that significantly cuts down the inside roughness. Sharp drill bit, number one, and also if you're using a lubricant, you can just use like WD-40, you could use mineral oil. There is cutting fluid if you've got that on hand, that can work. But when you're doing all those steps, it does two things. It reduces the heat buildup. That's why a lot of people use like a WD-40 when they're drilling these things out or whatever, but it can also actually make a smoother cut so that you don't have as much sanding to do. So I would recommend if you've got translucent, transparent stuff going on that you're going to have to sand, definitely use like any WD-40 works fine. That's what I use at this point. I went out and bought cutting fluid and there's no point. It's just, it was thicker and yuckier, possibly, let's just say possibly worse chemicals to be messing with. I don't know. Again though, you can just use like mineral oil. That's fine. You could probably just use water, I guess. Something to kind of keep that bit cool, and then clearing the chips, often. That will all kind of reduce that. So like worst case scenario, if it was just kind of sort of see-through, maybe just kind of sand a little bit, just knock down any kind of roughness on the inside, and that should probably do you. If it's transparent, if you can pretty much see through, you're going to have to probably go through the whole polishing thing. You can get away with just going up to like a 2000 grit or something, like do the satin thing, where it's just kind of muddy looking, but it doesn't look yucky. But that being said, if it is transparent, it is pretty impressive to be able to see it, to have a super, glass looking, no scratches or any of that stuff on the inside, and it's super transparent. It's really cool looking. So let's see here. Yeah, you can add stuff like that, CA, if you cover it up. And if you don't do it right, it may make things worse looking sometimes. So just that is a good. It is interesting. That is a good way to do it, because you can cover up scratch marks on the outside. I don't even recommend polishing a blank if you're going to put a CA finish on. Don't go through the full polishing schedule. Just sand it up to maybe 1,000. You could probably even get away with like 600, honestly. And then if you put that finish on and it fills those holes, and the light doesn't, there's nothing to there's no trough at that point for the light to get kind of messed up, so it's going to reflect back and give you that gloss. So it is a good way to do it, but sometimes the application of it can be kind of tough. So just will warn you about that. It may turn into more work sometimes. So yeah, happy birthday to Mr. Gold. Doesn't look like there's any other questions. I don't think, trying to think if there's any other stuff going on out here. Not really. I feel like I'm forgetting something, guys. That's why I'm walking around hemming and hawing. Down the road, so after these blanks go out for the pen blank club, then I've been so busy I haven't even looked at this yet, but once those are all accounted for, I'm going to look at the pumpkin pie blanks that I have left, and I'll probably throw those. There's going to be a good amount left. I wanted to add those as just a short run. There's probably, I don't know for sure, but I want to say there's probably going to be like 10 to 12 left. So it's going to be a very short run. Those will be available on the website soon if you're not in the Pen Blank Club. And then candy cane blanks are coming soon. They'll probably be, I got to pour them, and I found, I'm so mad. I made a ton of candy cane things, 3D printed them, and they're all brittle. So Elegoo came out with a new ABS, so I'm going to warn you guys. I don't know if it is the resin or if maybe it had to do with I was heating the resin up. I don't know what caused it, but ABS-like, Elegoo ABS, if you have a resin 3D printer and you're trying to do this for turning stuff, it appears that, I don't know if I just got a bad batch or what, but ABS-like 3.0 is what I was using, and it seems like it's brittle. I don't know if it was just I got something bad or I was doing something weird. It was printed in the summer, so, but I've done some experiments and they're just garbage. I mean, you could sand it all and all, they're just, I'm not very happy with it. It's like I was not using the one that works. However, what I have found is they came out with a new one. They just keep coming, just leave it. But this is actually a good one. They came out with a water washable ABS-like, which I've done experiments and that stuff works. It prints extremely well, and because it's like thinner. The ABS or the water washable ones, I actually really liked them. I don't do the water washing. I still just toss them in the alcohol thing. I just find that to be way easier. But ABS-like or water washable ABS-like from Elegoo resin seems to be pretty good. It wasn't brittle or any chippy like that. And I was looking at the specifications. It is a little bit, some of the specifications would indicate that it should be a little bit better for turning and all that stuff. So if you do that, the resin 3D printing, that is something that you might look into. I've gotten pretty good results printing it too. So let's see here. Yeah, hopefully this week will go smooth. Oh, it was not very fun. Yeah, if you have a reamer, that is awesome. Good point, Bone Crusher. I haven't found any though. It kind of can be a little tough to find the specific ones that you want and all that. Let's see, there was another question. When do I release my shorts? You mean like I don't know what you mean by shorts. I'm gonna ask you again to kind of verify. Are you talking about the pumpkin pie ones that I was talking about, the short run type things? Those will be, so I'm shipping, I'll know how many are left and I'll probably add them to inventory if that's what you're talking about. This week sometime, probably like Wednesday, they'll be up on my website. How to make resin look like wood. That's a tough one. I have tried a couple times, but basically you're just gonna have to find some browns, kind of mix them together, and then pour them. I definitely don't have a good answer. There are people that make, that so when I was at the San Francisco Pen Show a couple of years ago, I walked up and there was a guy that does a lot of resin, but he has a lot of wood pens as well that he makes. They're all bespoke. And he also does carving on them, very intricate detail carving kind of stuff. And I was looking at this pen, and for the life of me, I didn't even realize. I thought it was a wood pen, and it turned out. Then I realized I picked it up, and it was way too polished to be wood. And I was like, holy wow, that was good. Now, I don't know how he did it. I think he kind of he kind of just said that I think he said that he's got a couple different shades of brown. He just pours them together and it just kind of works. So that's my best recommendation for that. But it is a little bit hard to really make it look like wood. But you're going to have some variation, some variability. And typically wood's going to have kind of longer grain. So it's probably going to be like a matter of you saw how I poured. You're probably going to want to pour kind of at the same time a little bit and just move it around and then have different shades of brown. And if you can get those, instead of having it kind of swirl or blob, kind of, run up like grain, that's probably what you'll have to do. I haven't tried it though. I've tried it a couple times and just looked like brown mica powder when I did it. When you show your blanks coming out of the shorts. Well, I got to be honest, guys. I haven't even done shorts for a long time because I'm so behind with stuff, and I do apologize. So I'll try to get these things. I'll pop them tomorrow probably. I just find that I've got the heaters on. So we were talking about the curing and all that kind of stuff. One cheat that I've been doing is I have the heat bands, and I even have things underneath the pots, the little rodent or whatever snake things. It's just like a heating pad underneath the pots. So I get my pots up to like 90 something. It's 68 in my shop right now. This pot on the bottom is like 93, 95. So I did try doing I experimented a little bit with trying to do the post curing thing. I don't know. I didn't love it. One of the problems I had with it is realistically what you want to do is, well, so the proper way to do it, I think, and I think this is what they recommend. So I would, cast some blanks, put it in the pressure pot, and then pull it out. It's, once it's ready to be pulled out. And the problem is, the way to properly do that, you really want to, I think they want you to like set it aside for 1 day or so, something like that. Let it kind of harden up a little bit. Then you would put it in an oven. So you're still not going to get it done all in 1 day, the way that they recommend you do it. And realistically, you're going to want to leave it in the mold this whole time. So unless you've got 50 billion molds, it's problematic, because if you take them out of the molds, even if you've let them cure like overnight, so they're going to get a little bit hard, the temperature numbers that they want you to bake the blanks at, or you're talking like 180 degrees or something like that. It's going to soften it. So if you take it out of the mold, it may warp the blank a little bit if you've heated it up to that temperature. So it just kind of like, and what I was doing was I was just taking them out and then sticking them in the oven. It's not, then they get really soft because they haven't even hardened at all, barely. And you've put it under, 150, 180 degrees. So I didn't love that, but where was I going with this? I kind of got away from that. However, my little kind of cheat is if I can get the pot to like 90 something and kind of leave it in overnight, that does actually accelerate the cure a little bit. Very small amount. I'd say maybe maybe it'll cut a day off. Like I'm a little less anxious about shipping and stuff if I've done that. If they can get up, if they're like curing in a pot like overnight at like 90 something, technically it should accelerate the cure a very small amount, a little bit, compared to just leaving it in there at like 68 degrees or, whatever the shop is. So yeah, maybe the fun cup, that might not be a bad way to go. Or like the fun funnel, is that what you mean maybe? Maybe put a couple different browns in there with a fun funnel and just kind of, yeah. So anyway, to go back to when do I release my shorts, it's kind of like variable. Usually it's like Sunday or Monday is when I post a short with demolding and stuff. Things have been so crazy since August that if I get to it, when I get to it kind of thing. I probably will be posting the short, because I never posted a short of the pumpkin pie pen. I have video of it, so I need to post a short, but what I decided to do was post the picture or the video of that pen when the pumpkin pie blanks are available. That way people can see the pen and then go buy the blank. It just seemed to make sense at that point. So, all right, so yeah, you can technically pull blanks. If your cat, so here's the way that for Alumilite Clear Slow, again, assuming you're somewhere around my temperatures in the shop, 68, 70, 72, something like that, like room temperature-ish. If you're pouring a big block like this, where you've got, like an inch thick and it's like 6 inches, 5 inches, something like that, that's a fairly large block. And again, it's going to tend to heat up and cure faster. Like I would pull these out of a pressure pot in 2 hours with Alumilite Clear Slow at these temperatures in my shop. I never had a problem with that. They were definitely hard enough, everything. The problem is now we're pouring fairly small things, much smaller things. It's 3/4 inch, granted it is 6 inches and they are kind of close together, but it's just not as big a mass of resin. And I find that They're a little soft if you pull them in. I mean, they're definitely soft after 2 hours. Like at minimum for pen blanks like this, I would leave in 4 hours with the Lumelite Clear Slow. But I just find that they're definitely hard enough. Everything's good to go if I just kind of leave them in overnight. Now, here's another similar to what I was doing with these pots. And right now, I really need to kind of accelerate things. Like really, I want to actually add a third pot on each side here. It would really significantly help me if I had 6 pots going. The switch to going with Alumilite Clear Slow over the Alumilite White resin for the team color blanks, which I move way more of the team color blanks. Alumilite White, I could pull that stuff in 30 minutes. Okay, I think I left it in for 40, but technically you could pull it in 12. Like that's what the demold schedule is for that stuff. It's very fast. So it had some advantages when I was using it, but so I could turn over pots like in 30 minutes or so, you know. Now I got to wait and sit here and I got these pots doing nothing. But one thing that you could do, and this is something that I'm doing, I do need, it still doesn't alleviate the fact that you're going to have a lot of molds. But one way to go is you can cast your blanks, put them in the pressure pot, and then leave them in there for, 4 hours, let's say, if it's Alumilite Clear Slow. Pull them in 4 hours, leave them in the mold, and then grab yourself a 5-gallon bucket, and they have heating things that can go around those. Heat that up to 95 or so, 100 maybe, and then just demold, take them out of the pressure pot and then put it in something that's warm. Again, I don't know. I didn't really find that. I don't think it's very great to put it at 180 degrees right away. I think that they, Alumilite in this case, and probably most resin manufacturers probably recommend let it, take it out of the pressure pot and then give it a day or so to kind of just cool down, harden up a little bit. Then they want you to post cure. But if you can just get it in something that's a little bit warmer environment without going too crazy, you can just stack all your stuff in a bucket with a heating band. And that'll definitely do the same exact thing as what I'm doing with these pressure pots, but I don't have to leave the pressure pot full. I can put another set in there. So there's another, option for you guys maybe. I don't know. I will say that I bought a heating band thing that fits, because a lot of the folks that do home brewing and wine stuff, fermenting, I don't know, whatever, they do this same type of thing. So there are bands that are made to fit just like a 5-gallon plastic bucket. It was pretty expensive. It was like $70. So maybe you can find a cheaper one, but that is a little bit more expensive solution, that specific one. Another way you can go is in a cooler, and Brian was talking about this. I've never done this, but you can actually just use light bulbs, incandescent light bulbs and you could just even get one of those little styrofoam coolers or something like that. But you could also use an igloo cooler, maybe go to the thrift store and get yourself a igloo cooler, a plastic one, drill holes and then just put incandescent bulbs in there, and that might actually heat up the inside of that thing to 100 or 90 or something like that. Again, I don't know. I do know a lot of people use those to kind of keep things warm. That type of system, like a cooler with just lights, can work, and that would be fairly inexpensive. You'd have to do some finagling to get that to work. You'd kind of need to know your way a little around wiring and mounting things and doing all that kind of stuff, but. So, Barb, yeah, you'll get the replay. It was a pretty quick one. We made some snowy winter blanks. I kind of screwed up, but I think they're going to be good. It should be kind of fun. So let's see here. Let's see. Okay, I think that's about it. So anyway, guys, like I said, I'll try to get the demolding video up tomorrow or Monday. Maybe more likely Monday. We'll have to see for these. And then the pumpkin pie blanks will be coming next week at some point. But I should also post a video on Instagram and YouTube, a short or reel, whatever. Probably with a link to the pumpkin pie blanks. At least if you see me post something, a video with the pumpkin pie pen, then you know that the pumpkin pie blanks are available, and there's only going to be probably like 10 to 15, I think, maybe left. And then, again, down the road, coming soon, candy cane blanks. And those things are really fun. Yeah, I got one. I really love these things. I had to do some testing. Like I said, I had some brittle stuff. But man, these are so cool. I love these. One of my favorites. So, and they'll be full pin blanks. Those will be coming probably in like a couple weeks, let's say. So just giving you the heads up, and that will be, those are just like a seasonal blank that I make, partly because I have to 3D print all these things and I don't want to keep thousands of these things around. But probably it'll go beyond Thanksgiving and like into, it may probably go up to like New Year's, I would say. I'll probably keep restocking them, but then once like New Year's hits, like I'm probably done with the candy cane thing. Maybe even just around Christmas, possibly. So you gotta, about a month is how long I keep those going. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. Hopefully you learned something, like I said. Hopefully you learned from my mistake. Sometimes if you overcomplicate things, it just kind of gets a little bit crazy. But if you can kind of focus, like I said, try to get your notes, try to get things ready. That was my problem with today's thing, is I was kind of messing around and doing, if I would have just kind of been on top of things and had everything ready when it needed to be, like right away, like not messing around, I don't think I would have made that mistake. I don't think it's going to make a significant difference in the blanks, but try to just kind of get everything lined up, and I mean, even write down steps, possibly. That might cross them off as you go. I don't know. Hopefully that'll help you guys. But I'm excited to turn, I haven't turned a bespoke pen for a while, and I'm also excited to use the new Turner's Warehouse. I haven't really used their new kit of goodies. So anyway, I hope you have a great rest of the day today, and we will be back at it next week. It should be pretty fun. So again, thanks for joining the fun tonight, and I'll see you guys